Hey everybody, how you doing? I've been a Bond fan for a long, long time. I want to basically set the production foundation for what I'm about to say. I'm 59, and I've seen every Bond film, many of them many times over. I was born August 4th, 1962. Dr. No, the first Bond film, came out in 1962, I believe November 2nd, if memory serves, but I digress. So I swim in the water of having grown up with James Bond. Okay, literally. And yet, when I first heard about the idea of James Bond as a woman, I thought, yeah, why not? And I may have expressed support by some social media like, or maybe a blog in the past, although I don't think I've done that. I think I had it in mind. But I've changed my mind. And the reason I've changed my mind is because of this swirl of calls for actors to be of a certain particular race, color, ethnicity that fits the character. Okay. And that has happened in a number of cases. Most notably for me, who follows, Comic-Con and Marvel, Tilda Swinton in Doctor Strange, who played a character that everyone said, hey, it's supposed to be Asian, right? You know the drill, I think, if you're watching this. So I started to think about it because we have, on the one hand, people who claim that actors of color are not getting work because they're not allowed to represent characters that were written for, people who look like they do. Okay. Then on the other side, you have people who want to do things like make James Bond a woman. No. And I've decided no. And the reason is simply this. I'll just be blunt. There is an irrational attack on the common straight white male by others in society. At times I get the impression they're basically trying to cut off not just straight white males, but especially straight black men, because we're breeders, right? All right. That's the impression that I get at times. And look, you could make a pretty good case to support what I'm saying if you just look around. Enough of this. Because what happens is that people don't appreciate who another person is and the background that made them that person. And that is true for movie characters. Take a look at James Bond. Take a look at how he's described. Take a look at what he was intended for James Bond to be by Ian Fleming, by the way, who I think should have the ultimate say on all this, don't you? Commander James Bond is a fictional character created by the British journalist and novelist Ian Fleming in 1953. He is the protagonist of the James Bond series of novels, films, comics, and video games, which are familiar. Fleming wrote 12 Bond novels and 2 short story collections. His final 2 books, The Man with the Golden Gun, which was translated in one of my favorite movies, 1965, and Octopussy and The Living Daylights, were published posthumously. The character is a Secret Service agent code number 007, residing in London but active internationally. Bond was a composite character who was based on a number of commandos who Fleming knew during his service in the National Intelligence Division during the Second World War, to whom Fleming added his own style and a number of his own tastes. Bond's name may have been appropriated from the American ornithologist of the same name, although Fleming got the name from a Welsh agent he served with, James C. Bond. Bond has a number of consistent character traits, you know them, like martini shaken not stirred, which run through the books, including enjoyment of cars, a love of food, drink, and fine women and lovemaking, and an average intake of 60 custom-made cigarettes a day. Since Fleming's death in 1964, there have been other authorized writers of Bond material, including John Gardner. You get the idea. But the point that I'm making is that Bond is a product of England during the Second World War. And he is a product of a nation that was still regarded by some as extremely powerful. And you have to remember, during the First World War, Britain was very powerful. And you could look out at one point over a map and see all the colonies that Britain had dominion over. I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I'm saying this is just fact. And my point is that it forms the opinion or the point of view or the persona that is James Bond. The idea that he alone can handle the problem, but it's on behalf of His Majesty's Secret Service, okay? And he alone can do that. But Bond, even with a British background that might cause someone to think, oh, because he's white and British, he's racist. And if you're American, it hasn't been the case for quite some time. Back in the 60s, James Bond has always been hip. James Bond has always been with it, ahead of the culture, if you will, particularly during the 60s and the 70s. And that has served to really keep the movies going for quite some time. But the bottom line is, if you're going to understand why James Bond is James Bond, you have to understand James Bond's background, his country, what it means to be MI6, what it means to know secrets about a country that other people don't know, what it means to have a kind of a lifestyle that's emotionally duplicitous. All that goes into being James Bond as a man. And look, you can't have a female James Bond and have the kind of scenes that we had in Casino Royale. Remember when the chief stripped him naked, put him in that chair, took off the strap, and then did that little thing with the thing that twirled around that, made contact with his privates and hurt like the Dickens. Okay? So I'm not saying that can't happen with a woman. My point is that that kind of punishment doesn't come to mind the same way. We have to appreciate each other's backgrounds. We have to appreciate what makes people who they are, because then you can better understand how to write about them if they're characters, how to play them, and what they really mean. You don't change who they are just because. Now, some of you would say, well, how do you explain Idris Elba? I'll tell you what. I think Idris Elba would make a great James Bond. Why? Because he's so much Anglophilic that you can quite literally insert him into that role and have it be believable that he could grow up as James Bond. There are very few actors who can pull that off. Idris Elba can pull that off. Okay? Now, whether or not they'll have him do it is another story. I don't know. But someone like Tom Hiddleston, I think, would be great for the role. There's talk about the gentleman from Bridgerton. I don't know. That will be an adjustment, because I think what Albert and Barbara Broccoli has set forth with Daniel Craig is they said this, they made an open decision to have a James Bond character that was more like what Ian Fleming intended, a blunt force object at the use of Her Majesty's Secret Service. That was the idea, all right? And there's a lot of maleness that goes into that. And we're in the era of strong women bodybuilders who if you follow my channel, I prize women who are strong and are obviously beautiful and, and muscular. Muscle on a woman looks different from muscle on a man. Period. End of story. All right. A woman can increase her strength by 44% with no visible increase in muscle size. All right. I've known this since I was 14 years old. So that's never been an issue for me. So it's not about not liking a strong woman or anything like that on my part. No, this has nothing to do with that. This has everything to do with this need to appreciate a character. It doesn't matter if it's, for example, Spock, okay? Spock in Star Trek is Vulcan. Can you imagine putting him on another planet and taking his ears off or something? No, or female. You can't say that Spock is female, because if you say Spock is female, then you have to completely rewrite and take out a mock time where he, as a male, is driven after 7 years to go back to Vulcan and seek a mate. All right. I think Daniel Craig is right. We need to write better characters for women and particularly black folks. All right. And Asian folks. And on that note, consider this movement to have more Asian actors, and I might add, in roles that respect Asian culture and lore. Are you going to turn around then and say, well, that person should be white like we used to do? No, we want to stop that. Okay? I think this is a conversation we need to have. I don't know that it has a definitive answer. I don't know that mine is. I would like for it to be, but that's, the height of arrogance, of course, which, I kind of learned from being a James Bond fan as a little boy. All right. We all have to understand what it is that makes us tick and appreciate that, and also appreciate in other people, and understand how to really fall in love with the practice of knowing where other people come from in terms of their backgrounds, what drives them, what their tastes are. Okay. And understand that because a man is driven to want to have sex with a woman, it doesn't make the man sexist. There's that misunderstanding there that I think we haven't discussed yet at all either. But look, I think Daniel Craig is absolutely right. I think his heart's in the right place. And I'm glad he said it, because prior to that, I was a bit conflicted. I was like, yeah, maybe, yeah. And then I thought to myself, I can't, I'll remain a Bond fan, but it would be just not the same to have Bond as a woman. It was not the same. Okay. But we need characters that are more real. Let me show you. Okay. We need for one thing, this is Commander Bond, right? That if you want to make a female Bond, what you would be doing subconsciously is taking male characteristics and trying to superimpose them on what you think the female Bond would be like. But consider what you're doing. What you're actually doing is you're saying, well, okay, the male was popular. It was because of his popularity and all the ways we want to change society. We're going to take that and superimpose it on another character without really understanding what you're doing. That's ridiculous. Okay. I am way not in favor of that. And while I'm on it and I'm talking about Commander Bond, I just want to really take off just for 1 second. And I want to issue a complaint that has to do with how Wonder Woman is presented in DC Comics in the movies, okay, versus how Wonder Woman was actually drawn up. And this is, with the greatest respect to Gal Gadot, and as a great actress and someone who I think is, incredible, and has done an incredible job of representing Wonder Woman. But the fact of the matter is that when it comes to her musculature, it just isn't, there. And it seems like there are people who are afraid of showing a strong woman. This is how Wonder Woman should look. Right there in Sensation Comics. If I could enlarge that, I wish I could, but I'll try. Wonder Woman quite literally tussling with this train. In fact, the photograph is called Train Tussle. All right. And as you can see, and it's in Train Tussle is from 1946. I found a bigger photograph that you can look at. And this is how I always pictured Wonder Woman to be. All right. And I think that we're robbed of the real image of Wonder Woman. You're sending to girls who would aspire to be Wonder Woman the idea that they have to be skinny and look skinny rather than strong. All right. Look at that. That's okay. That. All right. So X is it's interesting. He's saying, I agree with him. Gal isn't the best actress to me, though. I understand. It says they're already CGI and Natalie Portman for Thor. Interesting. I mean, there's another part. Does Thor have to be a woman, right? He says, I'm mad that Natalie would be a Thor. She chose to leave the franchise. She only came back to get the titular part. Yeah, that I didn't realize that until you put that out. That's not exactly the coolest thing. And again, Thor, if you take a look at Thor, has had sex with a ton of women. So does that mean that Natalie Portman's going to have sex with a ton of guys? Okay. I mean, this is the character. This is the character we're talking about. And then getting back to Wonder Woman, this is the Wonder Woman. She's obviously muscular. This is how Wonder Woman should be presented. There ought to be a congressional law that calls for this. All right. So that's all I'm saying. Respect the character as the character was built. Subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark oaklandnewsnow.com. That is this.